We are back for another episode of discussing Kids Deserve It. I'm so excited to have all of you joining me today. While we're letting people join in, if you want to go ahead and type in where you're from, I always love seeing where a lot of my viewers or listeners are from. So if you want to type in your location, Alabama, that's a state I haven't been to in a long time. Hey, Liz just joined. Bree from Minnesota. Hey, I'll be in Minnesota in October. Rockwall, Ohio. Katy, Texas. Oh, one of my good friends, Brent Clarkson, lives in Katy. Andrea. Yep, that's Navasota. I will be in Minnesota. I will be right outside of the capital because my friend Brad Gustafson, I'll be visiting him. So, thank you, everyone, for joining. My camera's a little blurry. I don't know what that is. Okay, there we go. Thank you, everyone, for joining the weekly conversation of Kids Deserve It. We are on Chapter 8 this week. Chapter 8 is probably our shortest chapter in the entire book. Leave it in your car. And the funny thing is that this is Adam's favorite chapter in the entire book. And this chapter was actually Adam's idea. And so it was funny because I was talking to Adam earlier today, as well as a couple other friends, to get ideas about this chapter. And, I was talking to Adam and I was like, remember, this is my chapter. This is my favorite one. And so I'm so excited to talk about this one. And even though it's probably right at a page long or a page and a half, I think this chapter is really powerful. And the whole point of Leave It in Your Car is that every one of us, whether we are in education or some other realm, we all have those tough days, those days that are really difficult. And we wonder how we're going to make it through our jobs. And the one thing, too, that I'll say, too, on a side note, if you could help me out, too, and by sliding across and sharing this episode on Twitter or Facebook, that'd be awesome. But anyway, so we all have those days that are really difficult. I can think of many, including this week, that days that you wake up and you're in a terrible mood, or you got in a fight with your sibling or your spouse or some other family member, or something terrible happened at work the day before, or scores came back and that you don't want to go face the kids. Or you had a flat tire, you're low on gas, or something that happened to me last year, you hit a deer on the way to work. All those kind of things pop up. That's life. We can't help it when those kind of things come into our lives. But one thing that we have to remember as educators is that when we walk into the doors of that school, we have to stop thinking about us, and we have to stop thinking about the kids. And one thing we mentioned towards the end of the chapter is that our kids already come to school with a lot of baggage. They have a lot of crazy things that they are dealing with as well, whether that is abuse, lack of food, lack of sleep, raising their brothers and sisters, yelling with their parents the night before, not finishing their homework and being stressed. I mean, all kinds of things our kids deal with, especially if you're working with kids from poverty who also have the extra concerns of no electricity, no food, no water, no supplies, the clothes aren't clean, all that kind of stuff. And when I look at a school, I view that as that's the place that we should be designing as the safest place for our kids. And when they come in, it should be a place where they can put their worries aside and in the back of their head, and they can just focus on being there around people who love them, people who support them, people who want them in their lives. And so as adults, when we have those tough days, we have to make the conscious decision to leave that tough, difficult stuff in our car and come to school ready to be the best that we can be. And I know that is far, far more easier said than done, because I even think about myself. And then when I go through difficult things, I try really hard to leave those things in the car. And, one of the best pieces of advice I got was from one of my favorite people on the planet, Kim Bearden, who's the co-founder of the Ron Clark Academy. We mentioned her in the book. She's absolutely one of the most phenomenal people I know. And Kim talks about how, and she talked about this on our Kids Deserve It episode that she was on as well. And she talks about how, we all have those days where they're really hard. And sometimes when we get to school, we have to fake it. We have to put a fake smile on for our kids. We have to get excited. We have to bring that energy. But you know what happens? After you fake it for about 10 or 15 minutes, your body and your brain begins to believe that you're really in not that terrible of a spot. And your persona you're putting out there, your energy, your happiness, it begins to really affect you and change your perspective on the day. And I remember that when I was heading towards school in May. And it was early in the morning. It was our field day. I was going to be sitting in the dunking booth most of the day, and a deer came out from across the highway and hit the side of my car. Now, if you know anything about me, over the last 4 or 5 years, I have not had a good track record with deer. Never hit a deer before. 3 days before my wedding, with my then fiance in the car, we hit a deer, and the airbags deployed. 3 days before I went to Ron Clark Academy, I hit another deer, and then went 3 or 4 years with no deer, and then I hit this one on the way to work. My car was still drivable, but I was shaken up. I was stressed out. I was annoyed that my car was damaged again. I was going to have to take it in. I was going to have to pay. I was very upset and overwhelmed. And I pulled into the driveway at school and pulled into my parking spot, and I sat there in the car, and it was that moment when Kim Bearden's, what she had told me, came back to me. And I sat there and I thought, I can go into work and I can be unhappy and I can complain and I can be angry and I can talk about how terrible this morning was. Or I can go into school, act like it's been the best morning ever because it's field day. My kids are going to be excited. They're so pumped knowing I'm going to be in the dunking booth and they're going to dunk me that I have to bring it for them because they only get one field day this year. They don't get another one. And so if I come with an attitude, I'm taking a day from them. And so I went in, and I went in with energy. I went in with excitement. I acted like everything was going great. 15 minutes later, just like Kim said, I wasn't worried about the car anymore. I wasn't stressed about it. Now, does that mean when I went home that day, I wasn't worried and stressed? No, I was when I got back in the car. But that moment with those kids, none of those kids knew that something terrible had happened to me that morning because I was there for them to make sure that they were going to have a great day. And as educators, that's so extremely important that we are there for our kids to make sure that we leave our mess in the car, our drama in the car, and that doesn't mean we act like it doesn't exist in our lives anymore. Because a lot of us work with coworkers who really care about us. And we do have times where we need to break down to them. We need to have them help us. We need to have them walk us along the way. But when it comes to getting in front of those kids, everything else has to be pushed aside. And we have to bring it. Because that may be the worst day that kid has had yet. And you may be the only person in their life that's going to greet them with a smile. And I don't know about you, but as a kid, I didn't want to come into a teacher's room when they were frowning or scowling, or I knew they'd had a bad day. Because it was like, oh, it's going to be a bad day for me too, and I already got in trouble here. So let's remember to bring our best every single day for our kids, to leave our drama in the car, to leave our things that stress us out in the car, at home, and go in, do our most awesome for kids, smile, hug, high five, celebrate them, dance a little. I told my teachers this week, I said, what I do when I'm having a really rough day is I go to PE with my students, or I go eat lunch with them, or I go play at recess, because a child's imagination and a child's excitement is a powerful thing. And that is, as an educator, being somebody who works with youth, that is such a helpful thing to pull you out of a dark place, is to go and spend time with kids. Laugh with them, color with them, play with them, spend time getting to know them. It really changes a lot of your perspective. I hope all of you have a great week. We'll be discussing Chapter 9. If you want to join the Twitter chat here in just a couple minutes at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, we'll be talking about some different ideas and ways that we can leave things in our car and getting advice from others who have been through difficult situations as well. So I hope everybody has a great day, and I will see you next week.